How many of you have heard of 3D printing or additive manufacturing? Okay, good, glad. Good. I won't be giving a tutorial on it or anything like that. The next thing is, how many of you have hacker spaces, accelerators, or some kind of incubator in your region? Okay, good, that's good to see. And how many of you are not from a major market? Let's say something, population under 250,000 in your region. Okay, still a good fair number. Well, it's good to hear, because I think, and probably what you want to hear is, okay, great, I'm in New York City, we've got all the resources in the world, but what can I do in my region? And that's what I hope we can address today. What I wanted to start off with, and when I was putting together this presentation, is I thought, why not start with a list of questions that I wanted to have answered, and I thought that you might like to have answered. I won't read through them, but this is what I'm going to try to accomplish today. Startup manufacturing, hacker spaces, 3D printing has gotten a lot of attention lately. From the government, from the press, and from the finance group, we'll see some of these things. If any of you heard of the NAMI program, National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Institute, that just opened up last fall, there's a competitively bid thing that is now centered in Youngstown, Ohio. It covers mainly Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. So they're putting together 15 centers of excellence. The first one happened to be on additive manufacturing, but it's a $1 billion program that the government's put in. A lot of government agencies are involved in it. I've listed some of the other ones. One of them, the Economic Development Administration, has also put together 10 public-private partnerships and given each of them about $2 million each to advance manufacturing technologies, put together hacker spaces and other things to promote manufacturing in this country. And there's certainly given a sampling of the press that's out there, both traditional print press, online, TV, and so on. Here's a listing, this is by no means complete, of venture capital firms that are involved in manufacturing startups. It's been growing. You think of venture capital as funding your typical .com startup, your internet web services, or some kind of app development. But there are a lot of them out there now that are focused on manufacturing as part of their portfolio. How many people recognize this picture? This is from Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, 1936. But I would bet that a lot of you run across this in your region, that this is what people think of manufacturing. And here it is 75 years later. This is what manufacturing, what I'd like to do is first look at what I think is an updated definition of manufacturing. Is that it's the fulfillment of ideas through the transformation of materials. It's not my own definition. This is from an editor of one of the machining magazines I subscribe to. But I thought it was very relevant because you think about what manufacturing has been traditionally. It's been taking raw materials, labor, some processes, putting it all together to come up with some finished goods. That's mass production, that's typically a business-to-business enterprise, requires lots of capital, lots of land, lots of space. What I'm proposing is something different. So this is what modern manufacturing is now, startup manufacturing. These are examples of 3D printing equipment. The one on the left is more of a do-it-yourself, hobbyist style one, but it uses the same technology as the one that's right next to it on the right. And those are $500,000 and up industrial or commercial grade printers using the same technology of building objects layer by layer. That's what the factory of the future looks like, and that's what Shapeways is going to look like soon. We're in the process now. We've got about 12 printers in the factory in New York and 9 over in the Netherlands. So you're going to have an array of printers that can print millions of objects a year for customers. One of the things that this whole thing is called the maker movement, and it's been described as the next industrial revolution. And it's because there's kind of a confluence of things that have happened. You've got 3D printing technology. You've got social media, online social media, that you've got a cultural shift in the way people want to collaborate and share. And so all of that is leading to this. Not to plug a book, but this is actually a very good read that talks about it. It's called Makers. In my last slide, you'll have it as a reference on there, so don't worry about writing it down. This is what you're basically doing is you're taking bits and converting them to atoms. You can take a digital file and now convert it into a physical object. Here are some of the possibilities of what you can achieve with 3D printing. From the more traditional things like gears and nuts and bolts to tool and die, to more creative things like jewelry, accessories for your phone, clothing, shoes. They're even printing concrete now and marble. They're making entire sections of buildings out of this. They're doing prosthetic devices that can make a replacement leg. A lady last year, an 83-year-old woman, had a 3D printed jawbone implanted in her. And they're also doing research now and have prototypes of 3D printed hearts and kidneys. So the sky's the limit in terms of what's possible out there with 3D printing. What this is and what Shapeways is an enabler. We're enabling anybody and everybody to become a manufacturer. All that's needed is a computer, some kind of way to access or create digital files that describe the objects, an internet connection, and a physical address so we can ship the products that we make for you. So we're providing the industrial strength and commercial grade printers and giving them access to the consumers or startup manufacturing companies that they don't need to make the investment in that equipment. Here's a little snapshot of Shapeways itself. The company's been around for about 5 years. We've printed over 1 million objects so far. Almost all of them are all unique, so we may never print that one object again. We also have, in terms of a community, and the community members are people that are buying and selling these products. They're also designers and engineers and those that have an interest in 3D printing. Also on the website there are shops, and these are either individuals or groups of individuals that have set up and publicized their designs, and individual consumers can buy them. So if you want to use it as a proxy for, let's say, creating jobs, that's one right there. There are people that are on our site that are making a significant amount of their income from just objects they sell on Shapeways and other like sites. This is a short video to kind of give you an idea of Shapeways. Let's see how well this works.
This gives rise to a whole new way of solving problems.
People are taking the power of creation into their own hands. 3D printing is a way of making things element by element, additively. The things that we're designing, you just can't make them any other way.
Boom, open up your little small, pull out your idea, and create it.
It's mind-blowing to think that we can build something today that was literally impossible yesterday.
All right. That's 3D printing. Now let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about what, from an economic development standpoint, New York City has already got a lot of hacker spaces, fab labs, manufacturers such as Shapeways that are in this space of doing 3D printing or some kind of manufacturing startup. So there's a lot of resources there, but that's kind of obvious that New York would have that. What can we do for on the smaller side of things? Here I've put together a list of just a few examples of smaller hacker spaces, incubators, and accelerators from around the country that are not really big. They're in smaller markets, or the operating budgets of them are fairly small. These don't need to be expensive endeavors. There's some that have operating budgets that are $30,000 a year. There are some that have millions of dollars operating budgets, but it can be done on a smaller scale, on a shoestring. Who's seen these headlines? I think one of them, Luis Story, is actually going to be here this week presenting it. But this is what I guess I'm not necessarily want to come down on one side or the other of the issue, but when you see billions of dollars being spent on these large multinational corporations, they end up closing their factories with no oversight of it. Where's the return for you? Where's the return for the towns and the regions in terms of jobs? So what I'm suggesting is that instead of that, or as part of your toolkit as an economic developer for business retention and expansion, look at these incubators, look at these accelerators and hacker spaces, get involved in it and start bringing that here. I still believe that manufacturing is the backbone of our economy, certainly with the multiplier effects. And here's some numbers to back that up. This is from the National Business Incubator Association. It represents over 7,000 business incubators and accelerators around the world, primarily here in North America. This is just about North America from 2011. 49,000, those are the number of companies that incubators helped start up in 2011. 200,000 is the number of employees that were, or jobs that were created from those companies. 15 billion is the amount of sales revenue that those 49,000 companies generated. That's not even taking into account multiplier effects of manufacturing. 87%, that is the number of startup businesses that are still in business today. That they did a survey and said 87% of them are still in business. And I'm sure you've heard dismal statistics about how the lifetime of a startup company is fairly short and the chances of survival are fairly slim. The next percentage, 84%. 84% of these graduating companies through these incubator programs stayed in the region that they started up in. That's important to you as an economic development professional. And the last one is the $1 of operating subsidy. An operating subsidy is that money that comes from public funds, let's say whether it's local, state, or federal, that it generates $30 in tax revenues from those startup companies and the incubators. I won't go through all the details, but I think this is something that Matt and Michael can talk about as well. But there are a lot of things that are success factors, critical success factors to running an incubator. I'll just highlight some of them. Obviously, you need space. I think it doesn't need to be big. I've seen ones that are 1,000 square feet. I've also seen ones that are as large as a football field, some huge warehouse. I'm sure in your region you have properties that are just sitting dormant that could easily be used as that, as Matt can probably attest. You want to have a safe environment for them. They want to be able to feel that what they're creating is not going to be stolen from them, either from an intellectual property standpoint. You want to have some kind of mentorship program, whether the mentors are paid or volunteers. But these typically are maybe retired senior executives or serial entrepreneurs that just want to give back to the community. Other things that I think an EDO can take is to embed themselves into the makerspace, the do-it-yourself community. And a lot of that can be done through very simple and inexpensive means. Meetup, everybody's heard of that. That to me is sort of like a reverse of Facebook, is that now you're getting online to go meet in person. But it works. In New York City, there's at least 2 or 3 hardware-related meetup groups. They can be started for nearly nothing. And I think Eventbrite is a way to manage events, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel as far as how you sign up people, how you advertise it. All of that can be done already. Get involved in some of the trade events, Maker Faire, South by Southwest, which is in Sharice's district. Use LinkedIn, Twitter. LinkedIn, when I was working at the EDC in McHenry County, I started a group only for the manufacturing base so that we could talk amongst ourselves as far as issues that we had or suggestions that we wanted to do. I did not allow consultants, accountants, lawyers, or anybody else to join it because I didn't want them just using it as a way to get new customers. It was only for the manufacturers. Another way to foster some kind of interest and movement in startup manufacturing is to offer contests and challenges. There are websites out there and platforms that can do that. And I've listed a few of them up here. Challenge Post is based in New York, and they've run a number of things with New York City, other municipalities for running contests. And then there's also ones like Changemakers, which is more for social innovation. So that may be more on the ED side of things. And then there's a resource, crowdsourcing.org. All sorts of information on there that you can use. Here's an example of one contest that's ongoing right now in New York City. It was announced by Mayor Bloomberg at Shapeways factory opening last fall. But it's a way to foster and create ideas and get companies and individuals to come up with ideas that are making physical products, build them in the city. What they're doing is they have prizes available for the top 6 design firms or design groups. And then the 5 of them are from a judging panel. The last one is going to be crowdsourced, where the public votes who they think is the best project. Then those 6 winners are going to go through an accelerator program. So the city has come up with a accelerator to run these companies through, and then they'll pick a grand prize winner from that. All right, now this is a nice segue into crowdfunding. Who's heard of Kickstarter? All right, most of you. I'm just going to use them as an example because they're probably the most well-known and the model is fairly simple. But it's mostly artistic and media content, but they do have a number of categories that I kind of use as a proxy for manufacturing. These are technology and design categories. But they have, within the design and technology since 2009, they've had over 5,000 projects that are manufacturing related and over 130 million pledged. Now, pledged doesn't necessarily mean that the campaign was successful, because that number is closer to only 90 million, because with Kickstarter, it's an all or nothing thing. If you don't reach your funding goal, then your project doesn't go and no money is collected. And the success rate on the manufacturing side, or success in terms of meeting or exceeding their funding goal in this case, is roughly a third in the design and technology. So that's what I would call the manufacturing category. The top 10, within the top 10 projects that have been launched on Kickstarter, 3 of them are manufacturing related. In fact, the number 1 is what's called Pebble. If you see there's a watch up there in the right-hand side, that's called a Pebble watch. So it's a really fancy digital watch that's come out. They only wanted $100,000. They raised over $10 million. The orange slide, or one with the orange box, that's a 3D printer that was designed by a number of MIT students. They wanted to raise $100,000 as well. They raised $2.5 million. And the last slide there is or picture is virtual reality goggles. They needed $250,000. They got $2.4 million. It's just amazing what they could do. Now, I've just given a representative of a few other sites. But there are thousands of them out there. And a lot of them are sitting on the sideline right now just because of the Jobs Act. There's a number of things that they put in that bill that was signed in last April that are going to allow crowdfunding. They include that a startup company can raise up to $1 million through crowdfunding. They're putting certain limits that individuals can spend up to either 2% or up to $40,000 of their worth through crowdfunding each year. And then there's also some relaxed regulations for the companies that are registered with the SEC. But I think that's going to have a big effect, and it's just a kind of a wait and see with that. All right, that's about it. This is a fairly comprehensive list of the sources I used, and I think it'll be good for you to download that presentation if you want to find out more. And I'd be happy to answer questions at the end of when all of our other panelists get done. And now I'll turn it over to Michael.